Mayor of Minneapolis, the leaders of Minneapolis think very much they're people, the way you described that. And by the way, this whole thing is supposed to be some sort of political activism to express outrage over the killing of Mr. Floyd, police brutality, out of control, cops, lack of accountability, what have you. We're well beyond that. I mean, there's a very, very intelligent, important discussion to have about that. But when you've got images like this, mayhem like this reality going on, people aren't talking about, gee, how do we make our police perform in a way that will make us more proud of them? How do we honor the cops who do the right thing and punish those who do the wrong thing? We're moving well past that discussion now, just a discussion of total urban carnage.
Of course, they don't.
That discussion now, just a discussion of total urban carnage.
Of course, they don't. I mean, thousands of poor people are shot.
Of total urban carnage.
Of course, they don't. I mean, thousands of poor people are shot to death every year in American cities. Cities run by the people protesting. They don't say a single word about it. Every life matters. Really, where were you when thousands died on the street in pools of blood? They didn't care.
What was it? I think
so.
Just last weekend, 10 people killed in Chicago. Just last weekend.
Yeah, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
And I didn't see any protests about that. Nope, not at all.
Yeah, not one bit. Will you hold on for a second, Troy? We're going to go to Jonathan Sirius on the street in Atlanta. Things do seem to be accelerating there. We'd love to get a live update from Jonathan. Are you there, Jonathan?
Yeah, yes, I am, and I have to admit, I'm a ways from several miles away from the scene. I'm watching the images that you're watching from our local affiliate, Fox 5 Atlanta, WAGA. But as someone who's lived in Atlanta on and off since the early 80s, I have never seen anything like this. This is a city that prides itself on peaceful protest. Even back in the 60s, after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., when riots were going on in other major cities, the stories out of Atlanta were that black people and white people joined hands and marched peacefully through the streets to protest that and honor Dr. King. And you can have these very incendiary events taking place across the country, or even in Atlanta, only to be followed by peaceful demonstrations in Atlanta. And now we're looking at a burning vehicle. We're looking at graffiti outside of CNN Center, looking at vandalism going on. This is something that vandalism and violence is extremely rare during protests in Atlanta, but on this wide scale, I have never seen anything like this in the decades that I've lived in this city.
No. I've covered politics for 30 years, 29 years. This isn't politics. This isn't a political protest. These are the...
I've lived in Duluth, not too far from the big mall, where the lake almost dried completely up the year that I was there. I've lived in Douglasville, and I've lived in Kennesaw. I found Kennesaw to be the most favorable place to live within the urban downtown area, give or take about 30 minutes from where the spaghetti highways are. But I've never seen nothing like this. This is horrifying. This is horrifying to see how people are reacting and responding to this.
Expressions of people who don't believe in politics, who don't believe in our system, who want to overthrow it. I mean, obviously. Jonathan Siri, thank you. And it sounds like things are fluid there, so I hope you'll stick around for us if you don't mind. And we may get
Absolutely,
back to you.
be happy to.
What happens. Thanks so much. I think we have Senator Ted Cruz standing by. Senator, you there?
Obviously not.
Senator Cruz, are you with us? Thank you for joining us.
There he is.
So I'm going to ask you the question that I asked DeRoy. You're watching these pictures. You followed this for the past 3 days. What do you make of this? Where do you think it's going?
Well, listen, it's horrific, and it starts with a horrific act of police brutality. Anytime you have a police officer involved shooting, the media often goes into a frenzy, and there's an immediate demonization and attack of the police officers, and I think that's wrong. I think it's premature. That being said, in this instance, we have a video of the incident, and we can see with Mr. Floyd, the officer, with his knee on his neck for 8 minutes. Mr. Floyd has is handcuffed. He's clearly incapacitated. He's begging for his life. And what we saw was wrong. There's no legitimate law enforcement purpose for what we saw right there.
I'm sorry, Senator. Let me just stop right there and just ask a question. And I agree with you. I found the video very upsetting, and there's a lot of abuse of power by a lot of different people in charge, including the police sometimes. Yeah. Do you believe, since let's just deal with facts here, do you believe that the man in custody died of suffocation because the police officer was sitting on him?
I don't know. We'll have to see what the medical evidence shows. But hold on.
Isn't that the question? I mean, either the cop killed him or he didn't. I mean, no.
The question is, was that abuse of authority and police brutality?
It was definitely an abuse of authority, but the guy's been charged with murder, so isn't the question whether he killed him or not?
Well, there are two separate questions. Number one, the Department of Justice opened a civil rights investigation. That was the right thing to do. I applauded the Department of Justice for doing that. Number two, the prosecutor chose today to bring homicide charges. Now, to prove that, they will have to prove that the evidence supports it. I don't know what the medical examiner is going to determine on that. So whether or not it was homicide will depend on the evidence, but it was clearly police brutality, and it was not conduct we expect of any officer. An officer is entitled to defend.
I totally agree with that. I think it was awful. I've seen that I covered cops. I've seen that kind of thing before, and I hate it. However, the country is convulsing on the basis of the idea that a cop killed this man who was restrained. He was in handcuffs. And I think it's a meaningful question. It's not something we could have lied over and be like, oh, it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Why wouldn't it matter?
Tucker, saying that the criminal justice system will operate and it will depend upon what the evidence is and whether the case be proven to the jury is not a lighting over it. It's saying...
No, it's not. And I agree with you 100% there.
And one of the reasons, sadly, that we are seeing this violence and this rioting is that you have a lot of demagogues that want to use this incident of clear abuse by one police officer, and they want to use it to paint every police officer as corrupt and racist. And most police officers heroically risk their lives to protect the communities they're in, often minority communities. And for everyone that is stirring up racial division and engaging in violence and looting, that is completely unacceptable. Violence and criminal conduct is unacceptable whether it is committed by a mob in rage or whether it's committed by a police officer who's breaking the law. The law should apply fairly and uniformly to everyone.
So why is that so difficult for so many Republicans in Washington to say? I saw the tape. I was horrified by it. The guy should be punished for doing this. And you're not allowed to burn our cities down. And yet I've heard basically silence from the party that I've kind of routinely voted for all these years, rethinking that now. But why doesn't anybody stand up for the rest of us, civilization? Like, you're not allowed to burn cars. How's that? You're saying it, good for you.
I can't speak for others, but it's an obvious reaction. Enforce the law, protect people's lives, protect people's rights. And I'll point out, there is some irony that in Minneapolis, the local officials, the state officials, the attorney general, the governor, both senators, they're all Democrats. And you get a lot of people who are playing this for partisan advantage. And yet, one of the unfortunate things about a lot of elected Democrats, and we're seeing this during the coronavirus pandemic, is that they're willing to be authoritarians. They're willing to be statists. They're willing to send in people to arrest dads for playing softball with little girls or women paddle boarding. And it's, if you believe in liberty, then you want to see police officers keeping people safe and not abusing people's rights or liberties.
I couldn't agree more. And we've seen, we've seen a lot of abuse actually recently. Let me ask you just a question, and I don't know if it's answerable, but you've watched this country closely for a long time. Where do you think this is going?
Look, I think we've always had demagogues, and we've seen, you and I are both old enough to remember Rodney King and his plea, can't we just get along? I would like to think that we could instead appeal to our better angels. I think there are an awful lot of people, whether black or white or Hispanic, that want to come together as one America, particularly at a time when we have both a public health crisis and a massive economic crisis. Dividing us and turning people against each other is not good or beneficial, as much as the media loves to do it.
I think that's what you just said is absolutely right. And how nice would it be if we had leaders who could bring us together? I mean, that would just That'd be the greatest thing of all. Thank you, Senator. Good to talk to you tonight.
Thank you, Tucker.
We're going to keep these pictures up on the screen. They're on the right side of your screen from Atlanta. We want to go back to Mike Tobin on the other side of the screen, live for us tonight from Minneapolis. Mike, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, and I'm watching the crowd grow in volume. I'm watching the crowd grow in size. We're, 36 minutes away from this curfew that is set to go into effect. And it does not seem like anyone is backing down at the moment. There's a speaker out there at the moment. The crowd seems to have, he seems to have the crowd's attention. But people are quite passionate. They're still not satisfied despite the charges. They're intent on jeering these guardsmen and state troopers who are up here in a line. And usually you see that. Wherever the police form a line, that's where the demonstrators form a line and the heckling begins. It'll go on for a long time as nightfall comes. Usually that's when things pick up with intensity. I can't say it's going to happen tonight, but we've got an hour till this curfew, and we're just kind of watching to see how this develops, Tucker.
So, Mike, what do we know about the curfew order itself? If people behind you disobey the order and ignore it, which, as you just said, seems possible, what does the city do? What does the police department do? Do we know?
Well, it's going to be very interesting because they haven't really tipped their hand to that effect. But what we've seen in the past, if they crack down, if they come out heavy-handed, what you get is the crowd of demonstrators who scatter, and then there's a wake of destruction with that scatter as they head off in the other direction. We saw the destruction from last night, and I think the police very much want to prevent that from happening again. But they have now drawn a line in the sand that 8 o'clock it's over. So they've got to do something about it, and let's see how they handle it.
Amazing. Do police, have they been arresting people? This is something that hasn't really been clear. Do we have any idea what the policy is on arresting, how many have been arrested?
Now, they haven't made that clear, but the one thing that we saw up to this point, it seemed that particularly Mayor Fry made a decision that he didn't want to have the ugly scenes that we saw play out in Ferguson, which really energized the angry crowd. They went the other direction, and we still got ugly scenes. So they've got to make a decision here once 8 o'clock comes around. They've got the order to clear the streets, that the curfew's in effect. How are they going to do it?
We'll check back with you, Mike Tobin, for us in Minneapolis. Thank you.
You got it.
So underneath all of this, the most ominous part perhaps, is the potential threat to our justice system in the United States, which, by the way, is the best thing about this country. In practice, that system is often very flawed, like everything that humans control. We've told you a lot about that.
I'm going to stop right there and weigh in on what I'm looking at. What you're dealing with is a 21st century society that has been raised up under the guidelines of a Jerry whatever his name was, Jerry Springer environment that laughed at remorse, that laughed at hardship, that made fun of the demented, and didn't care about the elderly or no one else. What you're dealing with is a bunch of hardcore people that has been led in the wrong direction towards them thinking that the world owes them a living. If you'll combine this with the coronavirus that people are still trying to get over, along with how that they feel like that the government has shortchanged them, regardless whether it's local, state, or federal government, you basically have a recipe or a formula of a perfect storm. The people sat blindly by and allowed for these panhandlers to panhandle off of our emotions, people like Jerry Springer. and other type of people like him all over this countryside. The rich and the powerful is the people that the people should be attacking. They shouldn't be attacking law enforcement, because it was not law enforcement that created this environment. The people that created this environment was the people who let down the system, who become too greedy and too selfish. And their whole MO was off in what that they was doing. And it's pretty obvious that, once more, this is another failure of the system. Whenever the system can no longer provide safety and security for the general public, then the system has failed. Whenever you take a society and brainwash it to the point that God is no longer essential, that God is no longer imperative, that God is not that important any longer, you have a messed up society from A to Z. From A to Z. You not only have messed up environmental weather patterns, but you have messed up people. And this is what the consequences are towards seeing these uprisings that are spreading to other U.S. cities. I knowed it was going to happen. Me and Mr. Burns had already discussed it. They've already had an incident down here in Memphis, Tennessee. They've had an incident in L.A., Los Angeles, Southern California. And as people get together and they chit-chat and they talk, and they realize that they have not gotten the better end of the deal here, whenever you're having people that is barely surviving from one paycheck to another, whenever you're having people that can't even afford to put a set of tires on their car, and if they have a major blowout, it just completely eradicates their whole plans for the next 30 days or longer, because now they got to get a new tire. When you have people that is hanging on to the cliff like they're hanging on, you're going to have a recipe of catastrophe, regardless whether it be in one city or another. The only thing that I know to tell people is to be calm and do not take a vigilante approach towards bringing destruction to public or private property. We realize that a lot of people need to vent. We realize a lot of people need to be emotional, and right now they need to let their feelings out. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you do it in a calm, peaceful, civilized way. But whenever you go to damaging structures and when you go to hurting people, and that's exactly what you're doing, whenever you damage a structure, you're hurting people. And I'm afraid if this escalates too far, it's going to wind up biting all of us in the rear ends, not just the wealthy, not just the Jerry Springers, but it's going to wind up getting all of us in trouble pertaining to the working class, the poor class, the senior citizen class, and all of us. I mean, we was already heading in a very, very rocky road to begin with before the coronavirus ever hit. They was playing it off up there in the White House like it wasn't such of a big deal, but whenever you have to shut down the government, as many times as they shut down the government up there in the White House, and whenever you have all these debates about NAFTA and free trade, and you have all these other debates about this and that, and people not having proper insurance, and people not having no way to bury themselves if they die, and you got a recipe of a catastrophe brewing here. And I think this recipe isn't just in America, but we're seeing the same type of recipe that is sticking its ugly head out in other parts of the world, including, yes, Russia and China. That's having their problems too as well. People over here in America have been spoiled to the degree that they think that the world owes them a living. And I got news for you. The world don't owe you a living. There's only a certain group of people that have, I'm going to use this terminology, they have finally hit the brass bell to the point of being able to retire in a halfway decent way. Most of them aren't even going to be able to retire decently. But there's a lot of them out there that have earned their entitlement towards being able to basically live out their remaining years in a rocking chair type scenario. These people have earned that. They have worked all their lives for that. It's all the other people, the shortcutters, that are trying to get ahead of the game, that thinks that they can jump on the same retirement street as everybody, as the ones who have worked for 35, 40, 50 years, and it don't work that way. It's never worked that way. Money don't grow on trees. And you cannot borrow your way out of debt. I'm just afraid that something horrible is going to come out of this in one aspect, but at the same time, I'm hoping that something wonderful will come out too. And it may take this heart-wrenching type event going on all over this country before we're going to see a mighty move of God pertaining to a revival. This has torn me up worser than the impeachment trials, and this has torn me up worser than any other dispute that I've seen on national TV, regardless whether it was the Rodney King riots or the Ferguson riots or some of the other ordeals that has occurred. This has really affected me. And I don't know if it's because I'm like a lot of other people that, you know, your nerves only go so far whenever it comes to the pandemic. And you see where we got hit, blindsided with this coronavirus that has already done, basically destroyed over 100,000 lives of people, that is already hurting. They're upset. They're emotional. They feel like the government has wronged them, especially whenever the government keeps talking about raising taxes and having a $26 trillion indebtedness to throw up onto to the backs of the people, and no health care insurance. They feel like that the system has failed them. Naturally, if you're rich, you got a lot of money in the bank, you got money overseas, you got all kinds of assets, you're taken care of the rest of your life. You're set. That's the 1%ers. But the 99%ers are the ones that has gotten this thing in the shape that it's in to begin with. This is the reason why that all the hurt has fell upon the society the way that it has. It is super, super sad whenever people rather tear up than build. They rather destroy something than they would to increase the value of something. This is the work of Satan. It says in the Bible that Satan is the one that's out to kill, steal, and destroy. This is not the work of God. No, no, no. If somebody's saying that this is God doing this, you better back up and revent. This don't have God nowhere in it whenever it comes to violence and trying to bring harm and hurt into people's lives and destroying personal and private and public property. This has absolutely nothing to do with God. It says in the Bible that Satan is the one that's out to kill, steal, and destroy. And once Satan enters into these people, that's exactly what they're thinking. Kill, steal, and destroy. What can I take to get back at the loss of what the government failed to take care of me and my people of? I hate to see it because it's as if society has taken one step forward but 1,000 steps back, driving us back off into the dark ages, driving us back off into a primitive state of mind, a toxic environment. It's so sad.
On this show. But in its ideals, in what it tries to do and often succeeds in doing, there is no better or fairer system in the world. You may dismiss that out of hand, but ask yourself, where would you rather go on trial, especially if you're innocent? Nowhere. The United States. The worst moments in American history are those in which violent mobs have nullified our justice system and the protection.
I don't know about that. I've had some very, very incredible, cruel people that has tried to destroy my life pertaining to the trial system, sir. The trial system is one of the reasons why that these people are lashing out the way that they are, because of so many of them that has been paying fines and been keeping the rich man up.
It guarantees, and murdered the accused without trial. That is called lynching. Every American is ashamed that happened here, and should be. And yet, and this should bother you more than probably anything else you've heard today, some in positions of influence are calling for it again now. 3 weeks ago, a day after video emerged of Ahmaud Arbery, the shooting in Georgia, Bernie Sanders surrogate Sean King posted the following message on Facebook. It was aimed at the two men later charged with murdering Arbery. Quote, to Gregory and Travis McMichael, I need you to know that I know where you live and where you are hiding. Right now, I'm the only thing keeping about 150 different people from killing you. To the state of Georgia, hold these men accountable. I assure you, it's in your best interest, end quote. Now, Sean King describes himself as a civil rights activist, but what he's suggesting here is not civil rights, it's the end of it. It's lynching. That's what King is threatening. No one seemed to care, though. Famous people in Los Angeles still love Sean King. Then came Minneapolis. The news media have worked hard to hide what the rioters are actually saying or what their intent is, but pieces of video have leaked out anyway, and here's some of it.
We could have more fires. We have plenty of structures that need burning. We asked our city officials plenty of times to take down these structures. They haven't, so we're going to do it ourselves. It's easy work. It ain't nothing to us. We built this country and we will burn it down.
It ain't nothing left here, so when we start coming to the suburbs, when we come to the government center, then what y'all gonna do? You see what I'm saying? So, hey, that's just what's gonna happen. One of ours, two of yours, and it's time. This is only the beginning.
Over the last several days, demonstrators have surrounded the home of Derek Chauvin. He's the officer who's now charged in the murder of George Floyd. One person bragged on Facebook that a mob had blocked 3 straight food deliveries to his home. Quote, he's in there hungry, let's hope he's effing scared. Now, you may think he deserves to be convicted of murder, and it's entirely possible he does. But the system is playing out. The people you're watching on the screen don't believe that, because they don't believe in the system. And that's why thugs also came to the home of Hennepin County District Attorney Mike Freeman.
Look how many are defending this killer's house. Look how many are defending this killer's house.
So, to be clear, we support the right of assembly, of speech, of political protest. We defend it relentlessly on the show. Very few others do. A crowd marching outside City Hall is a call for justice, and we support it even if we disagree with their positions. But a mob surrounding the home of a district attorney is not a political protest. It's a threat designed to subvert our justice system. Mike Freeman's job is to weigh the evidence in a criminal case. The opinions of CNN anchors are not relevant. He considers the actual evidence. That's our system. But he can't do that. No one can if he fears he or his family will be hurt. The mob is perfectly aware of that, and that's why they came to his house. One of the worst things that lynch mobs do is distort the people who participate in them, who, believe it or not, in some cases are well-meaning citizens who become inflamed with bloodlust. That lurks beneath the surface in human nature. And suddenly they find themselves cheering as other human beings are humiliated, tortured, and killed. For example, at a press conference yesterday, DA Mike Freeman noted that, quote, justice cannot be rushed. That is true. And in our sober moments, we all agree that it is. But this is not a sober moment. So in response to that statement, one Twitter user replied this way: "This is the language of white supremacy," end quote. Now, we're not going to name the person who wrote that, because we know this is an emotional moment. But apparently that person is the principal of an elementary school in Minneapolis. And you've got to wonder if she really believes that. Does she teach her students that due process and a trial by an impartial jury are examples of white supremacy? Let's hope she doesn't. We doubt she does, actually. She's just a weak, sad person who's been whipped into a frenzy by the mob. Someday, in cooler moments, she will regret saying that, and we hope that day comes soon, for all of us. James Craig is Detroit's police chief. He joins us tonight. Chief Craig, thanks so much for coming on tonight. So I just can't resist asking you this, since you are the police chief of Detroit, a city that was flattened by riots in 1967. What are the lessons that, and it really hurt the city, as you know. I married a woman from Detroit. What are the lessons of that experience for you as the police chief of that city?
Well, you know, I grew up here, Tucker, and again, thanks for having me on this show. I always enjoy it. I'll tell you, I lived here at that time. I grew up. I remember the civil unrest in '67. 10 years later, I'm a Detroit police officer. Didn't want to be a Detroit police officer. And it was probably one of the best decisions I made, because I understood, and my dad reinforced, if you want to be about change, become part of the institution. And so, of course, I went on to Los Angeles, and now I've returned years later. But there were a lot of dynamic moves made over the years in a positive way. You know, the city really understanding what defines community and neighborhood policing. Many police departments talk that, but they really don't understand what that relationship truly looks like. And so many get it wrong. They just talk at the community. But you got to talk with the community. And that doesn't mean that you're going to have those individuals who are going to go sideways on you at any given time. But I'll tell you, Tucker, you know, and I've listened to a lot of what you said leading up to my interview, and I couldn't agree with you more. You know, we support the anger. We don't support that mob mentality. We just can't support it. You know, I praise the swift action of Minneapolis and dealing with the officers in terms of the occupation. However, one thing that oftentimes get missed, and I'm coming up on my 44th year in this business. You know, we talk about probable cause. We talk about what a police officer can and can't do. Many times we go to a scene of an incident, maybe a violent crime. There's evidence to support that arrest should be made, and we do that as police officers. Everybody's outraged. Even when I saw the video of this officer who clearly wasn't overcoming a violent resisting suspect.
Right, I agree.
Even that, he continued to apply pressure to his neck. And that point alone, is when he crossed over from being a police officer to a criminal.
Right.
And so anybody looking of that coming up.
You need for life out here.
As we watched it go up last night, you are seeing incoming rocks coming at the state police there. Just over there to your left, you see the Target Foods. They have cordoned this entire place off, but all of a sudden they are now gathering in one area, and that is why you're seeing all of the explosions. They are responding. You see the rocks being thrown there. Right. They are responding with tear gas at this moment in time.
Sarah, we're going to stay with you and your images, and you. I also just want to bring in Bakari Sellers as well, a former South Carolina Democratic state lawmaker, author of the new book, My Vanishing Country. Bakari, just as you see these images and hear what Sarah is saying about Minneapolis, I'm wondering what your thoughts are tonight, both to what's happening in the streets and also what's happening in the legal system and what's happening in America.
That's a rich question. I've heard a lot of your guests talk about 1968, and this does harken back to 1968. And I know your viewers are like, Bakari, you were born in 1984. What do you know about 1968? Well, Tom Brokaw called it Boom. He wrote a great book called it Boom 1968. Because February 8th, 1968, you had the Orangeburg Massacre, and that's when my father was shot. That's when 3 others, Henry Smith, Samuel Hammond, and Delano Middleton, were killed. 28 others were shot along with my father on the campus of South Carolina State University. You also had the assassination of Dr. King, April 4th of 68, and then you had the assassination of Robert Kennedy. You combine that with the uprisings that you had from soldiers coming back home from Vietnam. This is very reminiscent of that year. And so I share that story with you, particularly about my father, because I want people to understand that we are only one generation away. And that trauma that many people, many black folk, are displaying in the streets right now is a very real trauma. It's a perpetual sense of grief and grieving. And that's what you're seeing. That's the underlying cause. Not only am I a son of the civil rights movement, and I love Brother Cornel West, but my father and I are sharing too many of the same experiences. He's 75, I'm 35, and I've already buried a good friend who was worshiping in a church 5 years ago, along with 8 others. He had Emmett Till and Jimmy Lee Jackson. He had Goodman, Turner, and Cheney. I have Tamir Rice and Alton Sterling and Eric Gardner and Breonna and George and Ahmaud. And so as much progress as we've made, Anderson, we still have yet a ways to go. And I want to just take Brother West, if you give me 1 second, I want to take Brother West's statements just one step further, because there are a lot of white folk watching this program and trying to figure out what can they do. And see, that is an interesting question, because the first thing you have to realize is it ain't on black folk to cure racism in this country. I'm sick and tired of people thinking that. And the second thing is, and this is what the president fails at, because he doesn't have the empathy or the nuance to understand this. You have 2 choices. You can either be racist or anti-racist. That's it. That's the only choice you have in this country.
Exactly.
It's not good enough to simply sit at home and say, I'm not a racist. You have to be anti-racist. You have to root this out.
Right.
And it's incumbent upon people to have, as you said, we have to have conversations centered around understanding and empathy so we can begin to heal the divide in this country, because racism is killing black folk, it's killing us through COVID, and it's killing us on the streets of places like Minneapolis.
Yeah. Bakari, I want to bring Sarah into the conversation. Sarah, explain what's going on, if you can.
I can. So I'm going to get you 2 pictures. On the other side of the street, rocks are coming. You're seeing the National Guard coming. On this side of the street, look what you see. Look at what you are looking at. These are folks who feel like these streets belong to them, and they are taking a knee with their hands up, trying to show that they are peaceful protesters, that they believe these streets are their streets, and you'll hear that chanted often. This side of the protest, absolutely peaceful.